If you're a Pittsburgh baseball fan, then this is the podcast for you. Make your way down, grab a beverage, and get ready to talk Pirates with myself, Craig Toth, and Scott Jackson, two of the biggest fans you'll ever meet. This is Bucs in the Basement.
Now I see the changes in this town. They change, they say one thing, but then the next day it's different. They change, but they don't know what they want. All they do is change. Going left, going right, travel day, travel night. That's where we'll go. No excuses, no goodbyes, no one cries, no one lies. We'll never know.
We hear a lot about year 6 of the rebuild, and I definitely do get that. Just because, when Ben Cherington was hired, we saw the expectations written all over the place. We had them ourselves as to what would happen. For me, it's looking a lot of just comparing year to year, and not in that joking way of Ben Cherington saying that we're winning more and everybody putting those things out there that's like, oh, we won the same amount. As we've talked about, Scott, they won the same amount in different ways, so I could see them taking that step back. But we really wanted to maybe break down a little bit before we get into some of the latest news, the difference in this team from 2024 to 2025, and why this slow start as opposed to, I guess I wouldn't say mediocre start, because they were, games over 500 and were in the conversation for being buyers, with what is seen as kind of like a similar offense, similar pitching, but there are some pretty big differences. But before we get into that, Scott, I got to ask you, how you doing, brother?
Well, I'm getting by. It's hotter than Nick Gonzalez's bat up here in this part of the state, so we're sweltering. But man, even Nicky G can't carry the team on his back right now.
No, he is trying his hardest. I know there's a lot of conversation out there about him maybe not developing into the bat that we saw when we drafted him. I go back to the conversations I had with the draft experts and different stuff like that, and we all remember them saying playing at that high of elevation at New Mexico State, his draft profile was more of a gap-to-gap hitter with pop. So you're looking at a guy that, you're hoping pops 10 to 15 home runs, 20 home runs on an insane year, but for the most part, kind of finds those gaps and keeps the center fielder on his toes so he can't lean one direction or the other. We've seen it happen, at points in his career now, back from injury the other night, with a very good defensive outfield, for the Milwaukee Brewers, had them guessing and had them missing as to where that would go. But the offense, that Nick Gonzalez is one of those guys who, was a good part of the offense last year. And I could just kind of lay it out here. We talked about it a little bit before the show, but it was just the difference in, kind of like the number of above average, slightly above average to, more above average, obviously in a small sample size for some of those guys, what they were doing at this time last year in 2024. The Pirates had 6 guys that were above league average hitters, starting with Connor Joe at a 101 WRC plus, Nick Gonzalez at a 102, Jason DeLay, the man who could always find grass with his singles, at the 105, Andrew McCutchen, a solid 108, Brian Reynolds, 124, Joey Bart, only 69 plate appearances, a 142. Ono Cruz slightly below with a 93. But there weren't a lot of these below average guys and cavernous guys that we're kind of finding this season. Do any of those numbers from last year, kind of like looking back on it, do they like surprise you at all, or does it kind of match like, what was going on? We got June Brian Reynolds, which we have not gotten this year. He has a 647 OPS in June this year. In March and April, a 644. So he's almost as bad as he was at the beginning of the season. But I mean, they actually, I wouldn't say, I know the overall team numbers kind of slot out that they are in the same range, general range that they are this year. But it seemed like that there were at least a few more guys that you could count on to drive in those runs. And that could have been the difference in, flipping this record, not completely on its head, but at least making some improvements in that direction.
Yeah, and I think that leads into that Nick Gonzalez conversation where, you know, this year he's starting to become that run producer that they're missing, that maybe a Connor Joe was last year. In the first half, he comes up and, okay, we have a really good opportunity with runners in scoring position to drive in these runs. We've said going back a whole year that Nick Gonzalez is more aggressive than maybe some of the other guys are in the lineup, and he doesn't take as many pitches, and he's willing to go out there and swing if he likes something. The Connor Joe thing, I guess I look at the totality of the season, and I think of the disappointing season that he had. You almost forget that he had such a hot first half, and as Connor Joe went, so went the team. But yeah, Brian Reynolds is your constant. We've always talked about him being he's playing nearly every game. So when you're getting a better Brian Reynolds, you're having a better offense in general. And then yeah, Joey Bart coming in and just being completely in fuego like he was. that just not being able to replicate that, and then Henry having a little bit of promise, and then immediately after that Diamondbacks series just dropping back down to where he was. Those kind of things. Because I was looking and I messaged you and I said this is fundamentally the same team that it was last year, and they were in the playoff conversation past the trade deadline, and this year they fall flat on their face. And so, what are the big differences? You still had a black hole in right field, where really it's shifted to left field this year, and right field isn't terribly better. You're just not, guys aren't producing. You're not getting anything from third base. First base for a good chunk of the season, wasn't much to write home about. But now it seems like Horowitz is more on than off and playing some solid defense. Because I was thinking, like, did Martin Perez make that big of a difference for this team? Because they get rid of him and then he just fell apart last year. But yeah, it's just like there's just no offense. There's no, you're seeing with O'Neal Cruz. He's got this fair or not, this perception on social media that he's almost playing into at this point. He got benched by Donnie Kelly and he got moved down in the lineup. And we've seen some plays where, and everybody's going to point to like the play in center field that it got by him, or not running out the double play because he thought there were 2 outs. But how many times, I can think of at least 2, maybe 3 times where the umpire has had to stop and be like, that's ball 4, take your base, because he lost track of the count. And, what is going on? He just got to get his head more in the game.
Yeah, and a lot of times, if he wasn't missing on those pitches middle, either watching them go by and not even swinging and not being like feeling engaged, or just swinging straight through them where he should be and was at the beginning of the season, murdering those balls and punishing players. And we were talking about, his approach to the plate and how it seemed like his eye was getting better and was laying off of stuff. So they had to come back into the zone. Him being a little bit more aggressive. It's just kind of all for him. I don't know what is going to have him hit that reset button, because from like the middle point of last year When I feel like he finally regained that full health, started stealing a lot more, started hitting left-handers better, and until about a month ago, it was just like, man, if this is the O'Neal Cruz we get, we still thought that there might be that next level for him. But even if it stayed where it was, and he was a 30 at that point in time 50 guy, we would be, oh my God, that would be amazing. And now it's just like, is he going to be able to hit 20 home runs? I mean, he should be able to. I mean, it's only 7 more home runs, so maybe like 25. But yeah, I mean, the ceiling was so high at the beginning of the season, and it's absolutely fallen off a cliff. And just to even like jump into and compare some of the numbers, I mean, him right now is down below average. He's at a 97 WRC plus, where last year, where we didn't even see him, hit the gas yet, he was, an above average hitter. Not a ton better, than he was this year, but the start that he had to this season, to see him now be a below average hitter is absolutely insane. And you only have Nick Gonzalez at a 123 WRC plus, which, we're talking about being that Joey Bart, because that was in 69 plate appearances. Nick Gonzalez in 88 plate appearances. And then Andrew McCutchen, last year 108, this year 107. And it's just like that constant that I am going to be above average, try to keep this lineup together. And like I said, the big one here is Brian Reynolds, 124 last year and 86 this year. Joey Bart, 87. I mean, everybody's just like knocking on Spencer Horwitz. And yes, it's one of those big acquisitions, but he's up to a 90 WRC plus at this point in time, which isn't ideal, but kind of seeing how he started, he was down in the 60s for a little while and now has kind of started to work himself back up. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's just, like I said, you don't have anybody that you can really count on creating runs for this team, when last year you had 6 guys at this point above average. At this point in time now, you have 2. And I mean, I don't know what corrects this. I mean, obviously people would say that's why you hire a hitting coach. It's not for the overall philosophy, but it's to get these guys out of these funks. I mean, so that puts a lot of pressure on, first time, at least, head of the hitting program in Matt Haig. But I mean, that's where these are where these losses are coming from. You're 32 and 50. If you have the same offense you had last year, I think that at least gets you up to maybe 40. Still not, ideal. And that's just like a rough estimate. I'm not saying, I'm probably thinking 38 to 42, just based on the run production, just based on the numbers. And really, I mean, even an IKF who was above average is kind of dropped back to his norm for his career. He's like right around an 85 WRC plus. So even with that, I mean, the bats, they've cooled off, man. And they've cooled off hard. I mean, it's just, there's no way around it.
Well, like last year, the offense was producing the runs, but the bullpen was blowing leads. And so now you're seeing more consistency and more ability to hold on to some of these leads from the bullpen, and your offense isn't producing. It's keeping you in a lot of games, but it's not doing enough to help you get over the edge there and win these games. And we've seen it a few times with even Mitch. Like Mitch Keller was able to get a lead, hold the lead, pitch with a lead, and now it seems like whenever they give him a lead, he's just giving it back within an inning or so. And when he is getting the support, and of course, no run support at all for Skeens. And so you waste his fantastic starts, and then you end up with the starts like he had, the other day. against Milwaukee, where he shows that he is in fact human, and these other guys are paid to play baseball too. So it's yeah, it's a different failure. You go into this off season and into the season, and you think, okay, well, we need to improve the bullpen, and so you go out and you spend a lot of your focus on shoring up the bullpen. Okay, and it's pretty much worked, except for a few blowups here and there, but then the offense is lacking, and you know where are those holes? Connor Joe, like we mentioned, maybe was a bigger hole than we expected.
Yeah. And I mean, and I even looked at it like Edward Olivares at this point in time had an 85 WRC plus, where we know that Tommy Phams does not match that. So just, I mean, everything as bad as, Olivares was, I think that he went into an abyss after that, because obviously, making the move to try to improve that with Brian De La Cruz, who within his own right was not even that great of a hitter to trade for. I mean, kind of shows. But yeah, I mean, looking at it, it was like, yeah, everything has taken a step back, and players that you don't expect, at least yet, to take a step back. Brian Reynolds, and I hate to even mention, but All-Star last year, but he had improved last year. His overall numbers, his WAR had gone back up to the level, not like the six WAR Brian Reynolds, but had dipped a little bit the year before in 2023, came back last year. So you don't look for that to happen. Ono Cruz, you're looking for him to take that step forward. I mean, unfortunately, with Nick Gonzalez's injury, we'll never know. Spencer Horowitz with his injury before the season, we'll never know. But yeah, you're also just not getting it from places that, even at this point in the season, you are expecting to get it from. Brian Reynolds, okay, he'll be cool for, March and April, start to heat up a little bit in May, and then, be on fire in June. Well, he's not. And I'm looking at a lot of these games, and aside from, a couple little blowouts here and there, it's mostly like, okay, the Pirates are losing 3-1, 3-2, 4-2 like the other day. It's not like any of these games are out of reach. They may feel out of reach because of how anemic the offense has been, but I mean, realistically, if you're 4-2 in the sixth, seventh inning, like, you should feel like, okay, we get one good inning, and this game is ours because our bullpen has been pretty locked down. But even with that, it's just basically been like, okay, 4-2 might as well be 10-2
Right.
because this team isn't coming back.
They're not capable of the bloop and a blast like a lot of teams could possibly be. I mean, Milwaukee, you just never know. You just feels at any given time, even though you don't look at their lineup and think, maybe apart from Yelich, who has an MVP, you're not looking at that lineup and saying that any one guy is going to kill you. But they're strong enough that Joey Ortiz had a great game the other day, and he was batting ninth. So
Yeah.
you just, top to bottom, if you get a guy on base, there's a possibility that they can put two or more runs up on the board at any given time. And I don't feel like that with the Pirates. It feels like they have to claw and scratch and play small ball to get one run. And that's all they tend to get, or what feels like at any given time in any inning, you feel like they could max out at one run.
And I was looking at the home run totals, just to this point last year as well. And it's just something that kind of, Brian Reynolds had 13, Andrew McCutchen had 11, Ono Cruz had 11. I mean, Connor Joe had 7. So, I mean, you did have some of those guys. And at this one, it's like Ono Cruz has 13 and McCutchen and Reynolds each have 8. And I know that's only, a few less for, 5 less for Reynolds, and would that be 3 less for McCutchen? But I mean, 8 home runs, just even between those two guys. I mean, that makes a difference in some of those games. Like I said, I'm not saying that this would be, we would be 50 and 32, but it could turn at least some of those games around. And then after that, you drop off to Henry Davis with 4. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like I mean, I know everybody knows this, but I think that like seeing these numbers is just kind of like how shockingly bad this offense has been. And I know that it's like, okay, we could have added and we talked about this last week is yes, if you add one of those big bats, we had mentioned like getting in like a Brian Giles, like back in the day and getting that type of production. Obviously not guaranteed, even though, there's some out there that'll tell you it's guaranteed because if they would have just offered, Austin Hayes $5.1 million, he would have came here and had the same type of run production. But can't name any other player that would have done that. We've gone through those numbers as well. But yeah, I mean, it's not been good. And we knew it wasn't enough with this offense. But I think like when you kind of, like you said, you texted me this afternoon, it was just like, but this is like pretty much the same. Like these are the same players aside from, Edward Olivares for Tommy Pham and Spencer Horwitz, at least at this point in time, Esmeril Valdez for Rowdy Tellez, who had been one of the worst hitters in baseball up into, around this point last year. So, I mean, you even thought maybe that would kind of be an upgrade, but it's almost like it was betting on, I think what they were doing too much was Jack to have a bounce back and Pham wouldn't be playing as much. Obviously, you couldn't count on the Nick Gonzalez injury happening and Frazier having to play as much as he did. But yeah, I mean, but you weren't expecting, O'Neal Cruz from the start he had to fall off the way that he did. And for Brian Reynolds not to bounce back, at least at this point in the year, like he has done every other year, aside from 2020 when he didn't have the games to bounce back. Like they didn't get far enough into the season to allow him to kind of have that bounce back. Are you looking for coverage of all 4 major sports leagues? NFL, NBA, MLB, and NHL. Look no further than SportsVival. At SportsVival, they are dedicated to providing quality sports analysis, up-to-date news, and original content with a focus on draft and prospects, analyzing how teams are built and how franchises evolve through their strategic decisions. Without sports, how would we survive? SportsVival, proud partners of Bucs in the Basement. Yeah, man, it's not good. And I, like I said, I don't know where that changes and what happens at that point in time is that, your players start to get mentioned in trade rumors. I mean, it started off with IKF, it's moved to Keller and Bednar. One that we've discussed, one that I don't like hearing in that we talked about last week in Keller. But yeah, I mean, you pretty much, it's, Jeff Passan goes on with Jason Mackey and said, I think they would list on anybody but Skeens. And then you have a GM that nobody trusts. I mean, so like I said, just like last week, it's just like, trying to look at it at glass half full at some point in time. Like, I don't know how you can. I mean, it feels like even if that glass was half full, that somebody is siphoning the water out of it at like a ridiculous rate. And I mean, this season is going really bad, but it could go from bad to worse pretty quickly here if something doesn't happen.
Well, I was just looking back at the run differential, and the Pirates are at a negative 68 run differential, where for 2024 they're at negative 74. So already at this point, yeah. So we're that far off. We're only negative 6 runs off of last year's run differential. So I'm not at this point. I don't think that trading Mitch, even though he's one of the players that you decided to use a Bob Nutting phrase of put a stake in the ground. Even though you did that with him, I don't think it would be seen as a complete failure to trade him, especially if you get somebody who's ready to produce and somebody who's ready to contribute to a winning team, be one of those bats that we need that can drive in runs on a consistent basis. Um, it'd be shedding payroll, but I don't think we necessarily need to look at that as being the prime motivator. You have an arm who is making more money than other arms that you have and can bring you something of value in return. So trying to match up, it's not just as simple as saying any organization would need pitching and would be able to give us a bat. You got to find somebody who's in another team that's in the exact position where they need this kind of arm and they have a certain kind of bat that is in a position for us. So matching everybody up could be the tricky part. But I wouldn't have a problem at this point. Where are we going? What trajectory are the Pirates on? Some of these guys, it maybe it is time to shed them. A Bednar, a Keller. Now this idea that we had of signing O'Neal Cruz to this long extension, in my mind, he has not met the potential that he has. Is it a bad move to sign him to a long-term extension at this point? Instead of, because I think a lot of us had that thought a couple years ago. Hey, if we get him like a 10-year deal, and that would be a steal. Now I have questions about if we sign him even to a 5 or 6 year deal. Is that going to be a massive overpay, and is it going to be an albatross around this team's neck?
And that's where like all these conversations, and in some ways, it's just like with the Pirates, it always comes back to money. And until something changes within the economics of baseball, and I'm not even talking about a new owner, because I mean everybody knows my stance on that. That even if we do get a new owner, I feel like they would spend a little bit more for the short term, but I don't know how much of that could be, much beyond what they're doing. I saw a great interaction on Facebook, which is maybe like an oxymoron. I don't know what that is, like a great interaction on Facebook where somebody basically put it out there of everything that I've always been thinking about the Milwaukee Brewers, stuff that we've always talked about. They have ownership stake in their stadium, so they actually get some revenue from that. They own all of their parking lots. I think they made last year, it was like $2.1 million in taxes the state did on their parking. So you can only, do the math. If the state made $2.1 million on taxes on it, how much did the Brewers make to have to pay that $2.1 million in taxes? I mean, that's kind of where that extra money comes from with the Brewers. So, that's stuff that people don't really, they just basically say, same market size, same general revenue sharing. And does that make, Bob Nutting a bad businessman because he didn't start to do more when there was, spots open? Now they're supposed to have a restaurant. They're supposed to have a venue that I don't know if anybody's been down there. It's not finished yet, much like the product on the field is not finished yet, But I mean, that's the other part of it is they don't have that availability. I don't know if you made the comment on the podcast or if it was off the podcast. It's like, well, if we want to have, just move it out by the airport and have the stadium out there, and then we can have all the parking in the world and they can get all the revenue from that. And that's where, the extra money comes from, and you just kind of lose the skyline. So, I mean, yeah, that's, I hate that the conversations have to go that way, but like you said, it's going to have to be like that ideal. Can we trade him for a MLB ready bat who more than likely is an extra bat within that system that he's in, where they don't have room for him, but you want him to have at least some major league experience to kind of find some success, or is almost like that can't miss guy in AAA, but then why would that team trade him? It's a very like niche type of trade that would have to happen. And it would be one of those ones where it's like it's going to have to be a baseball trade. We've talked about this on the show even last week. If this is going to happen, I feel like that type of trade would be more likely to happen in the off season when people are actually looking at contracts for next year and trying to match those up, and how long is this guy going to be here, and can we find a hitter who maybe has just a little bit more control but is similar but a little bit less than Keller, and we can kind of make that swap at that point in time. Bednar is an easier one for me. I mean, he's pitching well right now, and I trade him for what should be a decent haul. I can't really say if that would be prospects, if that would be major league, whatever it may be. But I mean, we've seen like within the past couple of years, that's been the hot commodity at the trade deadline, and he's performing well. He has the track record aside from, the beginning of this season and last year. Hopefully people would be like, okay, he is back to form. We'll buy into that. And that would definitely clear some space because he's going to be due probably north of $7 million next year. So, yeah. I mean, if you have one of these cheaper guys, whether it be a Dennis Santana, if you hold on to him, hopefully, I just throw out names. If Chase Sugar, whoever, if anybody can fill, because as we've seen in Pittsburgh, it doesn't always have to be the flamethrower, because we've had Mark Melancon, who was not that, kind of become a dominant closer. That's easy payroll for me to shed. But it's just kind of depressing because I think that we were thinking 6 years ago, looking at this point in time, 5.5 years ago, whatever it may be, that, talking about trading these guys. No, we should have been talking about these guys being a part of a competitive team. And yeah, it's been a rough go here.
I got sidetracked thinking about how many more games a year I'd go to. Just for convenience and logistics, if the ballpark was in like Cranberry Township, be that much closer for me. But no, and if it was like a Three Rivers style stadium, one of those old cookie cutter stadiums, yeah, you wouldn't be missing anything at all. And it does sometimes play through my head of like, how long is PNC Park going to last? Is it going to be a Wrigley or a Fenway that just goes on and on? It's almost as old as Three River Stadium was when it was, decommissioned. So, but yeah, Bednar, I do think that back of the bullpen, especially when you're not winning games, is an easy spot to fill. I'm a big Santana fan, and I know that his contract situation isn't exactly long term, but I think it's enough that you can move Bednar and you can be happy with just having Santana fill things out for a little bit. Until that next generation comes up. And, I know everybody, I don't want to be a Bob Nutting defender. I've said it over and over again. I'm not a huge fan. But it was the McClatchy group that missed the boat on developing around PNC Park. I sell cars. That's my day job. And I had a customer who came in who was originally from the San Diego area, and he moved, away and finally settled up by where I work. And he was asking me, when I told him I was a big baseball fan, he was asking me how his Padres had been doing. And he'd been out of the country for a number of years. And so, I explained and got into the weeds with that about how, apart from their owner wanting, being sick and wanting to see a championship before he passed, but also made some very smart business decisions with their investments around Petco Park. And the Pirates missed the boat on that. And it is fair to say, that Nutting hasn't maximized what he could. But really, McClatchy and his ownership group had the opportunity when PNC Park was first opened. There was just parking as far as the eye could see, and they did not jump on that and develop it the way they could have and should have to provide the resources 20 plus years down the road that would have been a game changer.
Yeah, it's like we built this beautiful stadium, and yeah, you did. But yeah, there was so much that could be done down there, and seeing, how the North Shore has been built up with all of the restaurants and different businesses that are usually, overflowing with people and different stuff. It's like thinking what would be, the difference in payroll. And like I said, I think it would probably be more towards just like a Milwaukee type of spending. I'm not thinking this would be like a Cardinals type of spending as high as we've seen that go. But yeah, I mean, $20 million can get you a bat. That can get you a bat. And, as we've seen over the past few years, $1 million, $3 million, $5 million, whatever it may be, will not get you that bat. And that's where it's just like, yeah, I mean, that's if we're talking about shedding payroll to try to get that bat in, Keller's obviously the high spot on there. He's been pitching pretty well this year, so you'd be trading him, at a premium. He's up in the league leads. Don't look at the wins and losses and quality starts, and I think that's what most teams would be looking at with him. Bednar pitching well, and like I said, that's shedding payroll right there. Everybody obviously would like to, get rid of the Key Brian Hayes and say that's the $7-8 million that if you would, even go down to the Brian Reynolds. But with both of those guys, you'd be trading them at the least amount of value you could. And weren't people mad when the Pirates did that with Josh Bell? So it would be the same type of situation.
Yeah, and I'm not worried about Hayes' contract. That it's just a few $1,000,000. I mean, as much as I'd love to have that kind of money, but for a Major League Baseball team, it's not all that much for the kind of defense that he produces. And he, can occasionally, if he just leans into hitting the ball the other way, like he, has a little bit more recently. Just get on base. Just be that. If you're going to be a singles hitter, be a singles hitter. Just do it. Get on base. That's what so much of this team is just up there, and it feels like they don't change their approach based on game situation or based on the count. They're just going up there and looking for their pitch to take, the biggest hack they can. And then that's why it's such a breath of fresh air to have a guy like IKF who knows when to go the other way. Or, like Wayner was talking about the approach that McCutchen has had, where he's looking to shoot the ball into right center field on a fastball. So if he gets an off speed or a breaking pitch, he can pull it. And that's where some of his power has been coming from. And so it's that kind of smart thinking, smart hitting, instead of just waiting for the pitcher to make a mistake and unloading on it. It can get frustrating when you have a runner on second, nobody out, and they pull the ball, to the left side and don't advance the runner because they're looking to drive him in with one swing instead of playing the small ball that they have to play to win baseball games. Everybody wants to just be that home run hitter, and it's just not working out for everybody. Just get on base, move the guy along, just get back to the fundamentals and get back to, winning in the margin.
But dude, chicks dig the long ball.